Good morning, everyone. I'm on a little early this morning, and probably a minute or two. But today I'm going to check to make sure everybody can hear me, which is always interesting when you do a whole show and talk for half an hour, only to find out that there was no sound. So I apologize to each of you who tuned in last week, and we couldn't resurrect that show. However, today I'm here and the topic is going to be detachment and renewal. So I'm going to wait to see if anybody comes on. And that's always a problem that I have as well, is not seeing people come on in the sideline. So I don't know if it's really my computer. I see somebody with a like. Okay, thumbs up. Yes, somebody's here. I love you all, and it's always fun to meet yourself coming around the corner. Lisa, good morning, and happy birthday to you. I understand it's your birthday, so many blessings to you on this wonderful day. We honor you. Liani is present. I'm actually seeing people. I'm seeing things floating. Charlie's paying attention today. How about that? Wow, that's amazing. That's like transformation in and of itself. So I just want to just sound a bowl, just for a little bit of resonance to share with each of you, and just allow those tones to enter your consciousness. Breathing them in, knowing that through the sounds that we make, we enliven each other. And with that, I will begin with my sound from my throat, my tone, which some say is very relaxing, very peaceful. And I don't get to hear myself until after the show, so I don't really know how that affects on it. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sarah. And blessings to each of you. And interestingly, Chris, I have my Course in Miracles book right open beside me because I'm going to read a quote from that as a former facilitator for the course some 20 years ago. Anyway, today is about detachment and renewal. And years ago, I did a show with Alaya Frisch, who you may know was here formerly, and she had a show on Om Times Radio that we did together called Heart and Soul Talks. And the topic back then was called, interestingly enough, urban renewal. And it was really about our coming to terms with renewing ourselves in a world that was seemingly being torn down around us. And it brought up memories of my childhood. I grew up in Boston, and there was a section called the West End, which was primarily a nesting ground for immigrants and of all different sorts. So I lived above that on Beacon Hill, but I went to school with many children from the West End. And so it was a great cultural place to grow up because I learned so many different fascinating lifestyles. And as a child, you just accept them. There's no judgment. It didn't matter if somebody was Costa Rican or if somebody was Italian or Portuguese. They all had their own little, I would call it villages. I like within the West End. They were grouped. They grouped together. They had their own markets, and they kept together as families because it was safe. When that collapsed, those people dispersed into the suburbs, and I'm sure they made out well on some level, but it was totally devastating for them. So too for us right now, as we see what's going on in the world is almost a collapsing of sorts, where many of our ideals and principles that many of us grew up with and became familiar with and trusted, leadership, rules and regulations, constitutions, terms of agreement with, between corporations, etc. Everybody was really trying to bring out the best in people. And what we see now is I'm looking at it as a complete collapse. And all I'm seeing is the smoke and the dust from the rubble, just as I did when I was a child, playing in the piles of brick and sheetrock, etc., plaster, and electrical wires sticking out. So what do we do? What do we do in this case? And message for me this morning as I arose was detachment. And when I looked at the word, I realized that I myself have been doing that pretty much for the past, well, a while, but the past week more so than ever. I've kind of pulled back from Facebook. I closed down one of my Peace, Light, Love, Energy page. Tried to start a new one, but Facebook gave me a hard time. And I'm closing that one down too. And I'm realizing that a lot of the old patterns that I held dear to myself no longer work. They're not worth the energy to put into them. Not so much that they weren't good in their time frame. They were. And they allowed me to express and experience who I am. But they just don't work anymore. And for me to put energy into something that's no longer working is like an old car. I'm getting the message. It's like an old car, Charlie. You can have a 1955 Chevy, and you may love that car, but the body's rotted. You can't find parts for it. Yeah, you can keep it running, and in many countries they still run old cars, and they've got parts, and they've figured out how to work that out. But it really isn't the best vehicle for you to move into where you're headed. So for all of us, seems to be the story right now. We're all at the edge. We're at the sort of gateway of something new. And however you want to describe that, that's totally up to your own vision. And I'm not going to try to claim that I know what it's all about. I don't. But what I do know is that I'm the operator of this vehicle. This body and I have been on this earth in this incarnation for going 70 years, almost within a few months, 70 years. And it's not leaving in a hurry, nor is it going to stay stuck in something that's not working. And so for all of us, this moving on brings up a lot of aggravation. So I looked up, as I always look up words, and I encourage other people to look up words and become a wordsmith. Know that there's a positive and a negative side to a word. And many times we use words unthinkingly in a negative tone. And yet we can look at that. When we start to see that, we can call it back. Maybe not in the moment, but call it back to ourselves and say, I won't repeat that again in that way. I'm going to look at a different word to describe what I'm saying that's in a more positive way. So here is one way we get to the renewal part, is changing how we're using our language to describe things. I'm becoming more consciously aware. When I looked up the word Detachment. I'm trying to scroll, see if I can read. Well, some people are showing. That's great. Thank you. And if you have something to say, say it. I'm going to try to pay attention a little more and have it be a little interactive. I don't know how successful that will be, but we'll give it a go. So detachment, the definitions were that I wrote down were aloof, disinterested, impartial, disengaged, severed, and removed. And so those are all kind of not very nice words. When we look at it, we can see the psychological part of it. We can see the physical part of it. They were also uninvolved, unconcerned, indifferent, apathetic, separated, divorced. Well, now we're getting to more emotional level words to describe detachment. And the psychologists would have a whole program based on that if you were came to them and were describing some of these feelings. I think many of us right now are feeling those feelings. However, I'm not going to say it's a psychological issue. I always look at it as an energetic issue. Okay? The brain works through energy. What the brain does with that energy is a whole world unto itself. But the brain does not operate on its own. And this is the message I want to try to get out to people. The brain operates based on the information it's received and the programming that it's received, which can have come from trauma, which can have come from lack of love, which can come from pain and suffering. And it's recorded all of that. So when it starts to, when we start thinking about detaching from all of that comes up. And it's overwhelming for many of us. Loss of loved ones, loss of family, loss of friends. A lot of trauma comes up when we think about detachment. And what that does is the mind wants us to cling tighter to whatever's left that represented those loving moments in our lives or those passionate moments in our lives. Here is our dilemma. We're in a world that is evolving. The planet itself is evolving. There is a lot of destruction, a lot of chaos. Even with our own lives, we're not separate from the planet. If you look at your physical body, this is planet Charlie. You are planet Lisa. You are planet Ravi. You are planet whoever you are. And within you, everything that's within the earth is really within you, except in a different form. And I want you to think about that there really is no, as it said, separation between you and Mother Earth. There is really no separation between you and I, other than what we want to think and believe. And so in order to detach from something that's no longer working or is no longer needed, we have to call the energy back. We have to call the energy back in order to renew ourselves. And so I want to shift the thought to renewal, but know that we're coming from the physical ability of detaching from things that are no longer serving us or worthwhile engaging in. They just don't light our fire. Okay, there's no judgment. It just doesn't work anymore. It was good for a time. You may have enjoyed it for a time, and there's nothing left. Divorce is a great one. When people get divorced, usually there's nothing left to hold them together. They've each come to an agreement, and they realize, as nasty as it can be, the ideal thing is to pass peacefully, but to recognize that it's just not working. This just does not work for me. It isn't about you. It isn't about the money. It isn't about whatever it is. It's I'm no longer receiving what I need in this situation in order for me to be fully present in the truth of who I am. Here's the key. The truth of who we are. We don't know what that is. We don't. We guess, we play at it, we try this on for size, we try that on for size. But we really don't know the truth of who we are. And many of us are now awakening to ideas that 25 years ago would have been ridiculous. 25 years ago, though, I was a facilitator for the Course in Miracles. You can see my book is well worn. It's got scratchings, notes, highlights. It's got stuff I can't even read anymore. The ink is faded. But I was led to the Course in Miracles after I had my near death and came back. And it was by accident. And actually, the woman who led me to the Course in Miracles is coming today to have tuna fish sandwiches. And I haven't seen her in at least a year because she loves my tuna fish sandwiches. And so it's sometimes these simple things and simple friendships that lead to something quite profound. So what I wanted to read here is, perfect love casts out fear. If fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love exists. If there is fear, it produces a state that does not exist. And so the message here is love. How do we renew ourselves? How do we move through this sense of detachment without love? And I'm going to say it's impossible. Because in truth, we are love. And this is part of what we're learning. We're not somebody to be bossed around or somebody to be told what to do. We're not somebody to be a slave to someone else or to somebody else's ideas or concepts. We're free individual souls, sources of unconditional love. And this is what renewal is. We're renewing our vows. I tapped into the marriage thing. So we're renewing our vows with ourselves. We're remarrying ourselves. To marry, to bring together, to join as one. And this is where the separation has occurred. It isn't so much outside of us, although there's much separation that needs to be healed outside of us. But the greater separation we need to heal is the separation within us. This separation between heart and mind. This separation between soul and brain. This separation that was created by a mind, a brain, that is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's beautiful. Love it. It's received all this information. It's recorded all this information. The problem is, it doesn't know who you really are. It only acts as a construct within you, as an operating manual. You, the individual soul being that you are, you are embodying this physical presence. Past week, I burnt 3 fingers on my hand on a lawnmower. Interesting story. And I had just read an article about transformation, and it was a astrological report that was. The question was, ask yourself, how can you begin to define yourself from the inside out in a way that truly supports your ongoing process of healing? And so this morning I posted a mention, and people would get concerned, and how am I doing? How am I doing? I'm doing fine. But these 3 fingers were not doing too well, and I burned them on the side of a lawnmower as I just reached to kind of pick it up and hit the muffler. Long enough to create extreme pain and blistering. And somebody said to me, oh, well, are you using lavender oil? Or I says, no. I says, I'll tell you what I did. I stepped inside of myself. And as painful as it was, I knew, and as mad as I wanted to rage and tear that lawnmower apart, I knew in that moment that this was a profound message for me. And so I took my hand and I sent it light and I sent it love. And I said, and I told it to heal. And I told it that I loved it. And that I accept this message, although I don't know what it means. And that I know that there is nothing more that I can do, provided it's not 3rd-degree burns or something and I have to go to the hospital. But just send it love and send it energy. And that's what I've done. And they're healing perfectly well. They've blistered. I popped the blisters, drained the fluid out of it. Not a pleasant topic. But this process of self-healing is the message. We have the power to self-heal, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or physically. This is who we are. I talk a lot about we're creators. I talk a lot about we're the image of the divine master, God, creator, here in physical body. But we've been denied access to it, or we've denied ourselves access to it. I don't know what it is. And what's changing now is that each one of us have this power within us to renew from the core out, not from the outside in. And this is opposite of what the world wants us to do and how we've been trained to live in the world. So it goes back to the Bible, is renewing, is restoring to freshness. And in the Bible, I found a quote, let's see, it was Romans 1-2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And I think it was Paul. I'm not all that familiar with who, what, when, where, why in the Bible, although I've read it and been a Christian my entire life. These messages, these metaphors, these inferences, which have been combined in this book to teach us 2,000 years ago, or whatever, hello, today still has truth. And the message is we are the ones who need to discern. We are the ones that should know what is good and acceptable. We, in our hearts, know what's good and acceptable. Nobody has to tell you that. You know that innately. And if you don't, well, then you have some serious problems that need to be seen and taken care of. But I firmly believe that even in the worst of all of us, how our behavior, there is at least one ray of light that can be tapped into. I'm not a person who gives up on that. If I can sitting here today talking to you about this, trust me, there's a power greater than you ever want to know. Because I did not come here the easy way. And we're not going to go there today, but there's a long history of which, much of which I'm not proud of. But I'm proud of being a human and going through it and realizing where it came from and how I no longer accept that as who I am. And know in my heart that as that lost person, that lost person lives in everyone. And they too can change and renew their commitment to themselves and move on. Especially now where we need it. We really need to move on. So for all of us, I think we can all agree that we're experiencing some level of transformation right now. Whether it's external or internal or a combination of both. Many people complain about physical symptoms. Many people are complaining about deep depression. I said to someone yesterday that even I experienced that. It's not uncommon, but I don't look at it as depression anymore. I look at it as just the energy of change, of letting go, of detaching, of unplugging, of all of those words I use today, of disengaging, of severing. I was told to sever cords this week. I did land healing on my property where I felt there was negative energy. It's what I do as an earth angel. I healed, I co-create, marry the land and the people together and create a better energy field for everything to flourish in. And I had to do that on my own land. And this was all over mowing the lawn, which is so, such a redundant activity. I enjoy it, but I mean, it is, it's a laborious, redundant activity. And it became my greatest teacher. And this is where our teachers are going to come from. I'm not going to be your teacher. You're my teacher. We're each other's teachers. Everything we do now has the opportunity to become our teachers if we just let go a little bit and start looking at something rather than what we see and have known and say, what is the potential? This is raw potential for me right now. What is this trying to show me? What is this trying to tell me? We're going to get all riled up. We're going to hurt. We're going to tears. All of those emotions are going to come out. But if we can sit still without reacting to it and face it, face to face, just like I'm facing you, face to face, and not fearing what you think of me, not fearing what I'm saying. Just come in honesty and openness and willingness to dive deeper into ourselves and know who we truly are. Rediscover who we are. We're some amazing damn people, I'll tell you. And when I see people doing that, it's my purpose to encourage them. I'm not here as a healer to find the sick people to heal, because I look at the sickness only as a lack of that person owning who they truly are. Think about that. We can blame everybody and everything in the world. We can blame bacteria, pesticides, we can blame governors, kings, queens, we can put the blame on anything for what's happening to us. In the bottom line, in the last moment of your life, you're going to have an opportunity to look down at that empty body. You won't think of it as empty because you'll look at it as yourself, and you'll say, oh, but you'll question, how am I here and how am I there? Will the real Charlie please show up? And that's been my quest for 20-something years. Will the real Charlie please show up? And so I thank each one of you for being here this morning and listening. And know that you're not asleep anymore. You're awake. And it may not feel comfortable. And it may not look pretty. But the reality is that in the end, we're all here doing this together. And just before I came on, and I don't know if the image will come up. Yeah. Okay. An image came up. I was looking for a quote. And this quote struck me as I was looking for it. And I'm just going to close with this. We must let go of those things that don't serve us in order to receive the blessings intended for us. We have to make room for them. And I don't know if I can enlarge this enough to see who said that. No, I can't. Okay, but anyway, it's there. We must let go of those things that don't serve us in order to receive the blessings intended for us. We have to make room for them. And that, my beloved brothers and sisters around the world, is my message today. And I thank you, each of you, for being here. It says I've got 14 comments, but oh, okay, I see some now if I can scroll them. Seems like the computer's working better. The error last week I will have to own is mine, and that's why this is in front of me, so I can see if I hit the off button on the sound, because I usually put it behind me. It's all perfect. It's all good. We're here, and I want you all to have a blessed week. Think about how you're detaching from things, and know that it's a part of your renewal, that in order to renew, to transform who you are and become the truth of who you are, we have to pull back. We have to cut the cords. We have to sever relationships. We have to do many things that are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. And I know they are. They are for me. But I'm not doing them because of anybody else or because somebody did something wrong, because we always look for an excuse. I'm doing them because I love me. And maybe it's the first time in 70 years that I'm really beginning to understand that. So I hope you don't have to wait to be 70. And if you're over 70, bless you, keep going. And I'm looking for you to teach me how much you've learned and your wisdom and your teachings, because all of this age and all of this wonderful presence that we have here on this planet is such an accumulation of wisdom that you're not going to find on the internet, and you're not going to find it in the library, and you find it by communicating with each other. So keep communicating, keep being blessed. Know that I Thank you. I love you. And I respect you. Have a beautiful week.